Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here. Me. In me. Okay, so we'll make that the subject to this whole me thing. Ooh, brain. What's in it? Why is it doing what it's doing? Is there some statements that can be made of any use to human beings regarding what an I or a me is and all of that crap? And I guess I would start by just saying that there is an important piece of you. I mean, most of what you are is just a bunch of stuff that couldn't matter. In terms of it's a bunch of actions and reactions, knee jerks. The whole brain is just basically a bunch of knee jerks. Triggers, guns, loaded guns, firing guns, blah blah blah, and most of it doesn't matter until you have something called a sensation. So I would argue that all of the bullshit means nothing. How exactly we get from all of that activity, physics, the electricity, the chemicals, all that bullshit, doesn't really matter. It just doesn't matter how you get to the location. That matters is what kind of sensations are being experienced by you, and that the sensation part is the interesting part, the part that has all the value in it. Not saying there isn't value in the intelligence and all that kind of stuff as a means to the end of creating more of this feeling good stuff. I mean, the whole idea is to elevate the condition, and people can make this argument about this me universe in the sense of everybody's seeing some purpose in satisfying their own condition of feeling good at the expense of others, and there's some sort of logic in that where, of course, I would argue you can't make that make sense. That all there is this feeling condition in the end. So many people burned in fires, and so many people ate fun pie, and that's it. That's all there's going to be in the end, is an equation that says what was experienced in terms of what was felt. So that's the context of the conversation, is that the brain has more than one function. There's the part doing the reacting to the world, trying to maximize some idea of feeling good. And I'd almost, you can argue that some parts of it aren't even doing that at all effectively, and there's parts of us that are very destructive, like you can be addicted to heroin or something, and so you're feeling good in the short term and then feeling bad in the long run. So lots of bad math done in terms of the knee jerks and the reactions. So I guess I could draw some pictures. You could start. You could always go to some earlier condition and some other earlier circumstance to start. But, basically the idea is that organisms were just things, a stupid cell that had an opening, let's say, and then they had a little squiggly sensor thing, a little camera that looked in their mouth. Some sense organ, doesn't matter, and it figured out whether was there a food item? Did a food item go into the trap? And then the trap would say, hey, there's a food item in there, and it'd send a little signal, and the signal would say, close the mouth, right? So the mouth would close on the yummy food thing, and then there would be a bunch of processing, with the same little sensors and and then it would just poo it out. Take what it wants out of it. But that's the idea. So that's the reflex. The fundamental purpose of it is to detect something, cause some kind of bullshit, to make more of these. So now if I take this food and then I can poo out new little, robots doing the same kind of bullshit that I'm doing, which is just eating stuff, making more copies. So you have to eat stuff to make copies, so that's why all this stuff exists. And then you evolve, and as you're evolving, all you're doing is making more of these little sense things. And so what kind of happens is, you could say, I mean, I'm just giving you the real rough version, you know. So you're going to have to fill in some of the details yourself. But you could say the idea is that eventually it did make this actual eyeball, you know. You had an actual thing that saw the world, you know, and saw you in it. That's going one step further. That's, you know, more imagination. But at first it saw the world, and it sees what it wants, or sees something that matches a pattern. You know, this kind of pattern means yummy. Sees the pattern, and now it can chase stuff, because now it has little feet, and so it can run after stuff. And but it's just another reflex, another mechanism. And so this mechanism ends up being very powerful, this seeing thing, because, you know, you can see lots of different kinds of things. You can match lots of different kinds of patterns. And so now the reflex is sort of hidden, and that's this whole brain thing. So now you got this brain, you know, that's just basically doing the same knee-jerky stuff, you know, the stuff where it had to sense something on its tongue, or it had to sense in some other location. Now the sensing is sort of circular, you know, it's all inside the brain. You know, the eyes are really close to the brain, and then the rest of it, the brain just makes it up, in a sense that it's just looking for this. It doesn't care about this part, you know, or this part. So it's just seeing certain bits in the pattern and saying that's the relevant bit, and then it's having a little internal reaction. It has a thought, and you know, and then it's doing the same thing, controlling a bunch of different actions that can happen. So now, just as your imagination grows, in a sense, the number of interactions you can have also grows, you know, especially with these more modern organisms, because we can have a bunch of new muscle memories, you know, a bunch of new reflexes. You know, you can learn how to juggle or play the piano or do some other kind of thing, and you have a whole bunch of patterned reactions, you know, do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, you know, you can do that with your fingers, do-do-do-do, you know, and so you have all these kind of new things, you know, and there's some sort of sports heroes. These little reactions become some sort of catch ball, throw ball, toss ball, whatever, kick foot thing, you know, some kind of stupid muscle memory reaction that you've trained to be one of your new custom mechanical reactions. But that's all the brain's doing. So it's just constantly doing this shit, constantly getting fed this bullshit, constantly interacting with it, constantly improving the reactions, the interactions. And, you know, at every minute you're just constantly modifying these things. And if you don't practice, then this one gets a little fucked up, and then you have to fix it, and blah, 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 blah. You know, but that's essentially all that's going on. And again, the only part that makes it, I mean, we're just clearly robots. I mean, I can prove that in more ways, but it's all something has to go in. And so now we're seeing things, you know, what do we see? It's not exactly an eyeball. But what we see is other people doing stuff. And then, so now we can, you know, say, oh, what are they doing? And we can have a whole program in the brain that says, oh, imitate what they're doing, or copy what they're doing. They're winning, so be like them. And, you know, monkey see, monkey do. So, you know, it's kind of obvious that a lot of what we're doing is just imitating what we've seen, and what we've seen is successful. You know, that works, so we'll do that kind of crap. And it works in some kind of me first kind of way. So yeah, I did look at Google and say, oh, is there any images that are relevant to I and me? And of course it was all crap, you know. It's all some sort of eye candy of some kind, you know, just focusing on, you know, what has become, or what generally becomes important to people. So, clearly it's always about, you know, eye candy. It's about food. You know, essentially that's the primary function, is to do this eat and reproduce thing, you know, consume and reproduce. And, you know, so I mean, I really don't need to draw that, right? Right? It gets a little dirty. But, you know, it's you have to make the thing big enough, to make the eggs, and then you know to have the resources. In a sense, you have to be fat enough to be able to nurture the little eggs into new pieces of fat. Just incredibly lazy today. So yeah, it's just this cycle, and it's just repeated in every little instrument. And the only thing that makes this possible for us to make these distinctions between me and you is the fact that some, have orange hair, and some have blue hair, and some have whatever, and some little bullshit differences in this the chain of jerks. Okay, so what kind of jerks you have, and how jerky they are. And that's all that's defining the difference between you and me and this guy and whatever. That all this stuff is just this superficial shit, and some of it's, I don't want to say super, some of it's cosmetic, and some of it is just these learned programs. Whether you're somebody who does have a program for playing music, or doing something, writing poetry, or whatever skills you've acquired. And some people's skills are just being an asshole. They're really good at that. But they sort of suck at doing anything that could at all be something, a pattern that somebody else could see and say, "Ooh, yes, that's winning." But then again, you have the typical, rich douchebag, that people automatically admire, regardless of how they got to be a rich douchebag. So I guess in some sense that works. You just be a douchebag, and you'll wear the right suit, and you win. You'll look like a winner, and that's all that matters. If you're on the beach and you have the babes, it doesn't matter how you got on the beach with the babes. It just matters that you're there on the beach with the babes, right? And then people start, monkey seeing, monkey doing, and thinking that's how you win, because they have this really poor reflex defining what winning is, right? So that's a concept, winning, and so something like that, and so the brain can have these little notions about, well, you win at all cost. Somebody could have that notion in their head. Winning's everything. The people have to say, oh, you have to play a good game. You can't win by beating up midgets and kicking little kids or something. You have to have has to be some sort of integrity to your victory. You can't just fly in a jet fighter and shoot a bunch of peasants and call yourself a winner. Wait a minute. Yeah. So the definition is, it all depends on what kind of jerky crap you have in your brain defines what you think winning is. So winning is me. I feel good. All right, so you feel good. How many people feel bad? Okay, because you won. What did your winning cost? How many people's lives are ruined? Like, how many suicides were caused? How many people are orphaned? How much, And that's a real practical thing that happens every day. If somebody wins, that means somebody else loses. Well, what happens to the guy who lost, who would have won? I would have been the greatest. If it wasn't for those other 10 guys who were greater than me. If they weren't my way, I would have had a great life. But instead, I have to, jump off a bridge. So, there's lots of, cost to every time you eat a piece of food. Okay, there's Mr. Food. That thing would have gone somewhere else. And maybe it would have gone somewhere better than you. It would have fallen into a better mouth about doing more productive things. Like, I was going to cure cancer, but I didn't have enough lunch. So my brain got tired and I went to bed instead. These are real causes and effects in the world. This really happens. Silly crap like this prevents something from happening, right? The Salk vaccine or some other kind of thing, like penicillin, might not have gotten invented, okay, if his wife had a headache and she didn't make him a ham sandwich. Some kind of bullshit like that really could matter in the scheme of things, because a lot of things, teeter on just bullshit. You know, if Monica Lewinsky didn't have a douchebag friend, you know, she would have kept her mouth shut, and we would have never had to go through that whole bullshit of, you know, Clinton's sex life. I mean, little stupid things tip, you know, the world into bullshit, into, you know, a bunch of knee jerking all over the place. He jerks, then you jerk, then I jerk, then everybody jerks all over the place, and you just get a bunch of noise and crap and shit, and everything's turned to hell. Because of some stupid thing. So the only way you can defend against that is sort of understand that we're jerks, okay, that we have a bunch of psychological rubbish that, you know, your parents throw into you and the institutions throw into you, and blah 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 blah. I was sort of talked that out a little bit. You know, somebody made some snarky comment on the draft physics video because I made some kind of comment that I grew up in the best generation in the sense of the 60s and the 70s, you know, landing on the moon and lots of good things. Obviously the end of the Vietnam War, but yes, somebody had to cause the Vietnam War first, so it wasn't those good times if you're causing wars. But the point was more of just a perspective, in the sense that it seemed like people were getting more enlightened in terms of understanding this connection between, you know, all these different people, and how they all had interest and they had to be protected. And so you had the civil rights movement, and you had a lot of stuff that just had to do with people conceding that I can't do something here without fucking up people over there, and all that kind of notion. And so that's what I just meant by the best of times in terms of a perspective. And that most of what people were doing, not most, but a more substantial part of what people were doing was trying to construct memes and ideas and themes and music and whatever. Their creativity was sort of focused on this idea of taking the waste out of it, and taking the crassness of all this me first shit out of it, and this understanding that you can't build a bridge out of somebody else's bones and all that kind of crap. And that's all. But whatever. Doesn't really, I mean, see, again, this is one of those things where everything's dependent on perspective, in the sense that there's, now we can get into a conversation about, well, what's the nature of intelligence, you know, and is it just information, or is it need to be accurate? I mean, is there some place where it's not just your bigotries or your biases or your notions, but it actually has something to do with the fact that there's some process screening that thing out of all of the knee jerks. Okay, so you have all of these mechanisms that are testing everything that comes into your brain. I mean, it's, you know, your brain is creating a sort of obstacle course for everything. All the patterns have to go through the pattern obstacle course. So you see stuff in the world, and then it gets tested by your bullshit radar and your, you know, all these little tests that say, is there something there or is there nothing there? Does this piece of knowledge have high credibility, low credibility? Is this, you know, some, you know, whatever, Arkansas inbred telling me there's a UFO, or is it somebody important telling me there's a UFO, or all that kind of, just all these little tests. So everything's tested. And what intelligence is, what you learn over time, is just like everything else you practice. This tester becomes better and better at testing. It sees the boy who cried wolf thing. Okay, it's seen the kids say wolf and there's no wolf, and so you learn. Can't trust little kids saying wolf, that's for sure. Got to test it. You know, got to ask for more. Got to look harder. You know, you start to learn how to reflexively look at things harder, and, you know, spend more time on it. And it's a finer grain you're trying to see. You know, so you know that you have to look. You know, you might have to get a magnifying glass, and you might have to look at that. So you might have to work a little bit harder on some bullshit you hear or some bullshit you see to figure out what my right reaction would be. You know, should I say, well, I'm seeing something, should this equal sign say equals asshole? Or should it say, well, there's a kernel of truth there? Or should it say, well, that seems absolutely right? You know, so that's part of this process, is just all these tests. Our own brain is creating a bunch of, you know, it's pointing guns, you know, at the idea, and does it survive? Does it get through the gauntlet as, yeah, I got something out of that. I learned something. There's something to keep. Something came in, and just like this video, is there something in this video worth keeping? You know, just your brain say, oh yeah, this is an idea. This is a concept worth keeping. So we'll keep this idea that I'm making my tester better with each experiment. With each time I go through this thing, I can practice. This is kind of a practice, and I'm acquiring little kernels of information. And some of it, you know, I can be explaining, in a sense, a thought or an idea. Somebody could say, look, you're angry. Count to 10. Okay, give yourself time to, you know, let your anger be in you and realize, well, the realization that, hey, the only thing I can control in this circumstance, really, you know, I could react. You can, you know, so somebody can tell you, well, look, you can react, you know, impulsively and quickly, or you can wait a little bit, and then as you wait a little bit, what's going to happen is this anger thing, or this need to react, is going to start to filter into this thing, and it's just going to kind of maybe wane away. It's going to get lost in the gauntlet. The gauntlet's going to figure out, hey, what does reactions usually mean? It just means, you know, they bomb me, then I bomb them, and then they bomb me with a bigger bomb, and then I bomb them with a bigger bomb. And I really don't want to do that. I mean, I don't want to go to war, right? Right? I just want us to be able to know that this is a real conflict, and that, you know, we got to resolve something. So I could say something like, well, I don't agree, you know, but I want to bomb your ass. So maybe we should come back to this tomorrow, and maybe we'll both have better attitudes, and we won't be as reactive, and we won't be as impulsive, and so then maybe we can have this conflict some other time when we're both in some sort of condition that's going to mean that this isn't going to escalate into some kind of bloodbath. But I just mean that's what counting to 10 could mean. It's just, you know, give it time to wobble around in here and say, what is my reaction going to do? Is it really going to help? Is it going to fix it? Is it going to resolve it? Or is it going to make it worse? So having enough time just to think about it and say, will it maybe make it worse? Well, even just considering the maybe of the making it worse is enough to tell you, nah, reacting is pointless. Unless I have a real good chance of stabbing it in the heart and killing it, why should I get into a fight with a dragon, right? I mean, unless I think I'm going to kill it, I'm just going to piss it off. So why fuck with it? Wait till I have a better weapon. Wait for another day, another opportunity to kill the monster. So, I mean, that's just a thought, right? It's just a pattern of thinking that tells you that there's always good reason to have restraint. And so this could be a theme. I mean, it's not something I'm necessarily selling in this video, but I'm just saying that's an idea that somebody could glean out of it, is that, oh yeah, you just talked about that whole idea that, you know, it's always good to think about it first. Thinking's a good idea. Yeah. Reacting is like always, you know, no, don't do that. Don't do that instant reaction thing. Don't be too impulsive. Don't buy it, you know. Don't be suckered into thinking everything has to be done now. You know, that, you know, don't be fooled by 10-minute sale, must buy now, 900% off, blah, 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 blah. You know, don't be suckered, you know, by the bullshit that's saying you need it or you really do want it and it's really going to make your life better. Because if you think about it, maybe it's not. And your brain can do this. So your brain can imagine you, and it can imagine you walking through your life, you know, with your little shoes again, and you can sit there and be going blah, 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 blah through your stupid little silly life. And you can imagine all that, and you can see yourself falling into a trap and landing on the big pointy knives of, oh, I'm paying 43% interest on my credit card. I mean, it can see all that ahead of time. So you don't have to fall into these traps. You don't have to fall into messes. You don't have to get yourself into wars. You don't have to do any of that crap. If you just have a little bit of this intel that tells you the best strategy is be even more, you know, scheme even deeper. Scheme deeper. Okay, you want to win. You want to be a winner. You have to do it. You have to do it better. You know, you don't do it. So yeah, scheme all the way in the sense that recognize that there's an outcome 10 years from now and 20 years from now. So anyway, so that gets you all to this idea of ideas and notions and realizations, and then you start figuring out that, okay, my kids aren't better than other people's kids. There's no logic to think they are. They're not more hungry and more deserving, and they don't have more potential, and they don't have any of that crap. So that's all a pile of shit. And it's true of the future. The future peoples are just as good as the present peoples, and there's no way to make these idiotic distinctions that somehow I shouldn't give a shit about the future, and I go ahead and I can piss in their drinking water, and all those kind of metaphors. I can spend all their money, and screw them. No, they're just as valuable. I would argue they're more valuable because there's more of them. And so, anything you do for the future that's using intelligence. If you value this feeling thing and you recognize that my feelings aren't better than other people's feelings and all that kind of crap. Me having a broken leg isn't the greatest tragedy in the universe compared to somebody else having a broken leg. Now, clearly it'd be okay if the heroin addict has a broken leg or somebody who's totally useless, so I'm not saying there's no practical difference. There's always a practical difference between one person and another, but I just mean as a sensation in the universe, it's a broken leg. I mean, the feelings. Let's just say if everybody had a comparable experience with broken legs. Yes, it would be great if you could give all the broken legs to people who can't feel their leg, who are paralyzed. But that's taking any metaphor too far. Anyway, take a short little break. My brain wants one. I'm really having to force myself. I just have no enthusiasm for communication. Sorry. I won't say anything provocative. I'll just cause a reaction, right? If I say, "Oh, you're all just pathetic assholes," see, I just insult you, and you all get defensive, and blah 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 blah. So, but you really are all pathetic assholes. Pathetically stupid that I have to even go through all this bullshit. I mean, and that this has to still be explained. It's just too stupid. That all this trigger crap, that all of this stuff should be just hated by all of you, that all this manipulation, all this painted the right colors, everything is contrived. I mean, this whole little posing girls, I mean, they probably spent a half an hour figuring out how they all should look to create this piece of crap. And it's, it's just disgusting, all this manipulation, all just to get some trigger, some jerky, knee-jerk response out of your brain, to get you triggered, to cause the stupid triggered reaction. It's just pathetic that this is something that would even be possible. The whole society should say, "Oh, please, spare me your manipulation and bullshit." Fuck you is what it should be saying to all this crap. And here you have it very simple. See, simple, no pretense. Sun is warm. Sun is nice. Something simple, but that's probably some. They're probably selling something, So all of this crap is just so engineered, and it should just be so offensive to everyone that we're just getting manipulated by image noise, image crap. Oh, here we have the yoga, the the gurus, telling us how to live. Ugh. Anyway, why I am me? You think they can go? They're even going to come close to the right answer with this cartoon drawing? Well, Anyway, it's time for my break. So I'm going to break. Yeah, to find the thing to hit. All right. Anyway, till shortly, probably. Yeah, back. So I did see this image there. Not very well drawn. Anyway, but it said something, love of my life got married to someone else, apparently. But but yeah, I've sort of used that example, is that, everything we do has a consequence. So if we're winning, somebody else is losing. It's just a fact. Somebody else is now a loser. And what's the implications of that? Did the better man win? Are you sure you should have won? What have you done in your life? What kind of mess have you made in the world? And the really nasty part is we really don't get to do that. We don't get to see it. So as much as the movie It's a Wonderful Life is a piece of shit, it's a great movie in the sense of just using this tool of being able to see what the world would look like without you in it. Would be just so cool. And and then if you could play with it, and just test everything you do, first, just test it, test to see how that works out, and find the best way to, navigate your life based on the outcomes. But even the computer would probably break down because the implications just go on and on and on and on into the future. So it's not really about the fact that those two hook up, so to speak. It's about what they cause in the future, and what their kids do, 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 and and one of them eventually will be Donald Trump or some other kind of disaster, mess maker, and it'd be a very expensive mistake, and that's how the world works, and this is what people are doing when they, make investments, aggressive investments into the future, of saying, somebody can make the counter argument, well, you're denying the future of penicillin because you're not going to give birth to the guy who invents it, kind of thing, and all that's true, but again, the real point is not to create dustpans. The real point is not to create the dust you have to put in the pan. You don't make the mess, all right? You don't lament the absence of the fixer. You lament and you try to prevent the breaker, the thing that makes the mess. And the thing that makes the mess is this idiotic game we're playing of just chase the whatever has been defined as the thing worth chasing. And we know this, the stuff worth chasing is crap. It's all based on necessities, needs. Senses saying, get food in your mouth, find food, and whether you're feeding the upper or the lower, it's all food. It's just hunger and need, created by sensations that are compelling, that are obviously to some extent overtly, definably as not durable, not endurable, unpleasant, loneliness and blah blah, and regret and pity and sadness and all this other crap that you get caught up in because your life isn't doing what it's supposed to do, what you would want it to do. It's your reflex mechanism is harassing you, with mocking you. Oh, you're not finding enough food. You're not doing what you need to do, efficiently enough for the body to reward you with a pleasant sensation, saying it's okay to sit down and relax now. Instead, it's going to harass you. And so you can go into we have lots of weird psychological reactions. It's come up before, and somebody had asked something about depression. What's the practical function of this mechanism? Because it doesn't seem very practical. But animals go through it, so it must have a function. You must somehow, this rebooting mechanism, which it might be, somehow has some sort of value, rest, so to speak. And that's essentially what depression screams is rest, 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 rest. It's just you're too broken at the moment. You're not working well enough. And you need to recoup or regain some better function. So it's plays a role. It's just a weird kind of role. Things happen evolutionarily that don't necessarily have to be completely productive. They just happen because they're a byproduct of something else. So maybe our empathy or something is tied to the existence of our capacity to become depressed. And the empathy thing has real social value, so it wins, even though it has this negative consequence of creating this syndrome of depression. So its origins are probably something like that. And so we have all these functions, these patterns, these reactions, these jerks, triggerable reflexes that you can go through them, and see them in yourself. But having tools to defeat them, that's where it gets a little more complicated, because some of them are just in the form of ideas, and some of them are in the form of rudimentary functions. So again, we're back to this muscle memory thing, but the brain works in kind of different ways. You don't have just one kind of reflex. You have the ones that go to muscle memory have to be written in a different kind of place in your brain to be fast and efficient. So there's no conscious component. It's all unconscious. You barely see the stuff you're juggling. If you're juggling something, you're not really, the information is of value to your subconscious, but it doesn't have much conscious value in terms of coordinating your actions, because it all has to happen fast. So it's the kind of thing that the muscle memories are intended to sort of make fast reflexes. And some of our emotional reactions are the same way. They need to be fast. It needs to quickly tell you to get the hell out of a situation. You need to feel uneasy and queasy or some other kind of, and that needs to be a quick reaction, so you have time to accept its existence as new information. So even though it came out of the brain, okay, it's really going back into the brain. So what you feel is part of a feedback loop, in the sense that those feelings will be attached to the other information coming in from your eyes and ears and nose and all that kind of crap, and the feeling will become part of the first bits of information. So it's like your brain, telling your brain what to think. So it's tainting it, it's giving it a bias. And then it has to interpret, well, okay, I have for the feeling, but the feeling's stupid, so I'm going to try to get past it, because my smart part of my brain knows it's stupid. So it's overriding the feeling and saying, get rid of the feeling because I don't need it. But it can't do it, because the information is still the same to the part of the brain that does the short term, the quick thinking. The muscle memory is still the same. The reflex is still the same. You can't kind of just say, I'm going to stop my reflex from reflexing. I'm going to stop myself from sneezing in some kind of sneezing way. It's hard to do. It's hard to defeat those memories. But it takes, like everything else, it just takes practice. So if you practice doing it, you get better at doing it. So anyway, but this loop, this feedback loop of your feelings are essentially a pattern recognition, a very quick one, a very not very smart one, let's say, based on experiences and just chemistry sometimes, and it's always coloring what you're seeing. So that's the rose-colored glasses syndrome. The glasses are essentially being controlled by another part of your brain, and it keeps changing the color of the glasses that you're seeing through. And it's sort of a deliberate effort, tainted by your personal experience. But then again, you get to process it again and say, well, is that legitimate or illegitimate? And so anyway, so I'm just getting to the point that some ideas are just completely abstract, like debt is a bad idea. Imposing on somebody else is a bad idea. You might not have a feeling about it. You might not be emotional about it. You just know it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea for me to beat up a midget, to have an unfair fight, to take advantage in some slimy way. I can know that's a bad idea. I don't have to feel anything about it. I don't have to get emotional about it. I can just know it's bad. It doesn't have to be my kid's in trouble. It could be any kid, and I can just know it's bad. You know, if a kid's getting tormented or abused. So it's not a feeling thing. It's just a I understand it thing. And so the understanding things they easily change. You can fiddle with them all you want, but these visceral reaction things, once you know how to do 2 + 2 math, so to speak, you can't undo those. Those are really hard to undo. So the conditioned stuff is really difficult to change. You can't change your sexual preferences. You can't change your food taste in a lot of ways, because that's built into this harder stuff to change. And the only way you can really change it is you just have to change your entire life experience. So if you want to change your queasiness, you know, seeing blood, well, then you have to go look at blood a lot and have positive, happy feelings about it. You have to have like a really good time watching the blood leak out of somebody. You have to try to positively reinforce yourself out of this negative reaction that's built on, you know, your conditioned experience, and to some extent, what nature has forced on you. So you could argue that the queasiness about blood is sort of one of those innate things like snakes and something else that our brain automatically reacts to. So it's sort of you're born with it. And you're always going to have to overcome it, so to speak. You're going to have to tell that, you know, you're going to have to retrain that muscle memory, that reflex, that innate reflex, let's say, or that more, it's built more into a hard function of the computer rather than the soft. You know, it's not a software thing, it's kind of a hardware thing, and you're basically telling the hardware to do something different. That's really not the best way to metaphor it, but anyway, it's just harder to reprogram that piece of institutional knowledge or information, it's a reflex, you know. So the whole thing's a reflex, and so it's reflexes changing reflexes. And so the thing I'm arguing is that we do have this higher reflex of intelligence. Well, that's completely you can't see anything there, right? It's pretty cool. Anyway, all right. So what I'm saying is that we have this whole thing starts with the fish. You know, it starts with this basic idea of something just going through, you know, it has little, you know, instruments for navigating, and it's got a mouth and it lays eggs and blah blah blah. And that's where we start, with just this simple pile of reflexes that just get you through the water and get you to the little food bits, and then get you to, you know, die for your prodigy. And then we're getting to this higher place where there's some other mechanism, some other objective. Okay, you're not just a fish anymore doing its egg thing. You're doing something bigger, in the sense that the world's coming in with all this information. So the food's in the water, the reflexes are inside of you to do certain things, and part of those reflexes, though, have this idea, the idea of winning, and defining this idea of what winning is, you know, how what your objective is. And I would argue that the only logical objective you can have is to do this productivity thing, is, you know, to make the world a better place for your existence, to leave the place better than you left it. I mean, you got it. To value add to the mechanism in some way that produces more good feelings than bad feelings happening on Earth. And so that's where our intelligence, you know, although it's all deterministic, it all depends on the universe hitting you with ideas, you know, the right people walking into you and saying something, like me, for example, and saying, this is really how you measure how good the Coke machine is how much Coke does it produce, and how efficiently, and how many cans does it crush, and how much, you know, money does it drop on the floor, and all of that kind of crap. And the efficiency here is not just your satisfaction, but the satisfaction of the rest of the feeling bit things moving around. So this concept that, you know, so the simple argument is, by nature you're a fish, and you're just worried about the me thing, you know. It doesn't do any complex, well, you could say that a school of fish is doing something. So there's some programming that's basically saying there's a certain efficiency in us doing certain behaviors, because as a group our DNA will win, even if you are sacrificed, even if you're the single me that gets consumed. So even in fish, there's still that mechanism. But you can understand that if we go all the way back, it's always going to be some kind of selfish gene thing, right? It's a set of DNA molecule in an individual, and that's what's got to get into the future. And I'm just saying that part of the way it got into the future was doing the fish school thing, recognizing that there's certain programming that should be collective programming. That is, it's in the interest of my prodigy and me, my family, my connected people have similar DNA to me. It's in my interest to do certain things that are very productive for our DNA against another colony of different DNA. So lions against tigers or something. It's the tiger DNA has to, it's fighting not only for the individual tigers are fighting, but the tigers are fighting the lions. They're competing. And, so there's this collective knowledge thing that happens. Collective interest, collective reflex, where we all have a reflex to huddle up and, do some kind of gang behavior. And in a sense, though, that's the value, because that leads to this idea of intelligence and modifications and being able to adapt to the circumstance and be a better fighter. And that's why we have this intelligent thing. And it's just basically doing this. You're just doing the same thing that evolution was doing. In a sense, you're just conceding intellectually that makes sense. If there's some good thing, okay, we want to have the good stuff go into the future, and we want the bad stuff not to go into the future, and that's the objective. So instead of this evolutionary objective of my DNA, we're really saying it doesn't matter whose DNA it is. We want the best DNA to go into the future. We want the thing that's the most productive, the most efficient, the best soda machine should win. So if you believe the best should win, okay, the better man should win, the better everything should win, if that concept is just a should, is agreeable to you, well, there's fundamental certain things you have to do to get there. You're not going to get there by rewarding the broken and giving them free rides and all this other, subsidizing retardation. You're not gonna get there by feeding the colony lead paint, and essentially, a lot of what we've got in our society is that. But you can see the underlying ideas are still there. There's people like Sam Harris or somebody else doing this intellectual thing in some sort of way that the mass media finds acceptable, and so they become talking heads of the society, and they do understand some of these mechanisms, and they make some sort of rational statement about how it is determinism. You don't have free will. If you understand you don't have free will, then you can understand you might be an asshole, you might be an ignoramus. You don't know what you are until you take an assessment of it and recognize that, what am I? Am I a reactive asshole? Am I a thoughtful person? What are my real objectives? Am I just scheming for what's in it for me? Am I just pretending to swim in the school? And I'm really just doing me first. And I just figured out that if I sit in the middle of the school, then I'm guaranteed that these assholes are going to lose. So I'm just doing my scheming thing, and I'm just really trying to defeat the purpose of this impulse to do the hive thing, because I'm just taking advantage of that mechanism. That's what I'm using my intelligence to do, is just scheme for me, or am I understanding that me is it's almost an irrelevant concept, in the sense that the only part that's important about me is that me has a bunch of knowledge, it has a bunch of reflexes, of intelligence that say things like the best should win, it should be a fair fight, it should be this, I can understand these concepts of fairness, and I can understand concepts of deserve and earn, and how efficiency, key word. I should understand waste is bad. Okay, don't waste anything. If you can prevent a waste, prevent it. I also have to understand, though, you have to, some inefficiencies are going to be inevitable, but you don't have time to spend 10 years to learn how to play the piano. You can't perfect the song, because that consumes all your ability to do everything else. So there's some shortcuts you have to take. Like this whole video is a horrible shortcut. But yeah, that's what you have to do to try to maximize the performance of this stupid thing you call your brain. And you know that the brain is just these ideas. It's just these thoughts, memes, principles, the words like fairness, understanding what the fuck the word means, or did I deserve it? Understanding what the word means. Have I done anything useful in the world, or have I just been a spam phone call, or an irritant, a mosquito, a parasite? That's the basic theme. And now, so then you have this whole, the irony is that they can have these people who are both claiming to be saving the world. Okay, so social justice warrior, they use a concept like that, when the people who are against them are the same kind of warriors. They're just warring against the other social justice warriors with their notion of social justice. Where I inherited it and I damn well earned it. Daddy said so. So it's just sort of ironic that you have these people who think they're saving civilization, and neither one of them has a clue how you do that except to oppose those guys. So somehow fighting them somehow will fix what's broken. And no, they didn't break it, and you didn't break it. We all broke it. The very fact that it had to be interpreted, everything has to be interpreted through all these common denominators or something. All this crap is you can have the right idea. It's like evolution. Evolution can't happen in the big system, all right? Because the big system says different. Okay, everybody's an A here, right? Everybody's A people. Okay, in a big system, ours just gets completely diluted. But in a little small system where there's only a couple of A's, then the R has a chance of proving itself better. When it just gets wiped out by the big system, the Borg, and we sort of live in that scenario where the Borg just ruins all capacity to do anything innovative or smart, new, different. It just sticks to these Borgy traditions. The old wildebeest just tell all the wildebeest, this is what it is to be a wildebeest, and the only way you can change it is to wander off somewhere in your little colony, and then you can have lots of change and lots of ideas and try lots of experiments, and yeah, you might fail and you'll never be heard of again. But if you succeed, you'll make a better wildebeest, and now you can come back and fight the Borg because you're strong. So it's a matter of strengthening your group identity and becoming a group that has some sort of real integrity before you attempt to change the world. Well, whatever. Then you can get into all the whole, you can get into a lot of war strategies. I guess I was just arguing from the fundamental principle of this: what is intelligence? And some people think it's intelligent, just you win. Okay, I got mine. That's the only standard for success. Is I did it and it worked for me, and I can just pretend that like I said, you can have a tightrope, and you can say, look, I successfully ran across the tightrope. But you can know that I couldn't do that. If I had to do it again, I would fail 80% of the time. So, I mean, just because you did it, you're saying something like, well, it's really easy, and you're telling other assholes to go try it, or you're pushing them onto it and say, go ahead, run. But yeah, the odds are they're going to crash and burn. And so as long as you don't pay any attention to all this doesn't matter to you, because you're not going to feel their crashes and their burns. All you know is, I'm happy over here, I won. You're not paying any attention to the fact that, well, what did it cost? I mean, World War II, 50 million people, first brutalized, lousy, rotten, horrible conditions, enduring all kinds of crap, and killed usually, and probably most of them in some way that took more than 5 minutes to die. Just a horrible, brutal, terrible thing. Well, what the fuck are we doing here? Saying, oh, everything's great. Make America great again. When this is what it cost. What the fuck do you think you're doing over there that's so fucking spectacular that was worth any of this shit? And it's happening all the time right now in the world. It's, a terrible place. Lots of horror and brutality. Most of the human beings are living in shit. Living shittily, you could say, even. Even people who have it kind of good, like me, Still sucks. I mean, the neighbors are way too close. It's way too crowded. Shit. It sucks. And that's, tons of people living in fucking apartment buildings. I mean, gigantic buildings with 50 million fucking losers and idiots all over the goddamn place making noises, smells, all kinds of shit. Ugh. It's disgusting. Who wants to live like that? Ugh. Anyway, it's probably enough of a video because I'm just getting a little bit... I'm letting my old primitive knee jerk into the video, and there's just no point in letting that happen. So anyway, the point is that intelligence is part of our determinism. Becoming intelligent is part of determinism. It's part of the script we're reading. There's some value to intelligence. And most people say there's some value to intelligence. Okay, so to understanding these simple kinds of 2 + 2 = 4 kind of shit that I can't sit there and pretend that 2 + 2 = 4. Well, no, this 2 is really important, so this is really 568,722. All right, so this 2 is really, really big important. No, I can't really do that. It's just a 2. Okay, it's just something in the game. You're not especially special. And so everything you do has to mathematically add up. You have to figure out how you fed this to $6 million worth of resources, and you only gave that to 10 cents. And you can't make any sense out of that. Why'd you save this 2? What's so special about this stupid 2? And this 2 doesn't worth it. It doesn't matter. Well, it's not my 2. I didn't give birth to it, so it's a useless 2. It's just bullshit. It's just overtly unintelligent, unreasonable, silly, nonsensical crap. Only a Trumper could believe it. Kind of thing. So anyway, probably enough of a video. I think so. So it's the kind of subject you can return to, because I really didn't get into all the, like I said, you're just reading a script that's based on first it's based on our evolution from a fish, and whatever happened before that, and then it's that's a big piece of you, your whole biological reactions, the things that are driving you, and then you have this part of your conditioning, where you're maturated and how that creates these new impulsive feelings, and then you have the intelligence on top of that, where you're given information about how you are just psychology, how you are just a fish with a bunch of neuroses, imposed by your, parents and social institutions, and the bullies beat you up too many times, and some other kind of crap happened to you and made you paranoid and afraid and blah, 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 blah. So you got all that crap, and then you got this layer of intelligence that can understand all of that crap. Maybe it can't do much about stopping it from being an inhibitor in your life. It can't stop you from hating, and can't stop you from loving the wrong things, and it can't stop you from all that other bullshit. But understanding that you're dangerous, that can stop you. So it's like the pedophile. He can be a pedophile. He can be horny for something, and he can know, but I can't have it. It's wrong. It's bad. It's somebody can get off on beating women up or something, and because it fixes their bad conditioning, satisfies the anger and the other crap that's inside of them. But they can know it's wrong, so they can stop it in the sense that their intelligence can paint a worse picture. It can taint their imagination of gratification can be tainted by understanding the price that was paid for it. So just as you can look at a pretty flower, you can understand, pretty flower is just seducing insects to do this whole reproducing thing, and blah, blah, blah. It's just a mechanism. You can understand what it is, and understand that, I wouldn't make more of them, or some kind of statement like that. I wouldn't endorse it. And so you can understand what harm is, and you can understand you don't want to do that harm thing. So I guess that's the principle that can be understood. And then that can be built into your integrity. So you can have these bad impulses, but you can also have a sense of honor and integrity. And it tells you, I'm not going to beat up the midget. Even though I got my boxing gloves on, I'm all ready for a fight, and there's only midgets to beat up. Well, you can know that even though I really want to punch some shit, I ain't gonna punch no midget. Nothing. I don't mean anything against the little people. I mean, see, that's part of the tragedy of what we get conditioned with, is we get this stupid munchkin bullshit. We get different things, and there's sort of a positive thing in the sense that it's, it gets it into your public knowledge, but it gets into your public knowledge in some sort of way that's cartoonish and silly, instead of some sort of way where Steinmetz or something, some person who was afflicted, who did something a regular legitimate scientist would do, or something, some image that gives you a better impression. And so I don't want to be look, just the very fact, see, my intelligence is reacting, and it's reacting to the fact that I just noticed a little bigotry thing, a little bit of a, you shouldn't go with that, even though that's socially something that's been developed as a theme, and the existence of clowns as a fact, and the using midgets as clowns as a fact, and all this other, even though that context exists, it's a very negative context. You shouldn't play with it. So blah 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 blah. So my brain's reacting all the time, saying, my intelligence, all the time saying I got triggered. The brain knows that that's part of that social justice thing, and that in spite of all this rhetoric, that that's not what we're supposed to be doing. Of course that's what we're supposed to be doing, is trying to find some way to have a fair fight. It's not fair, okay, to pigeonhole. It's not fair to classify all people based on, group behavior, or even bad habits of the past. That's just being unfair. That's cheating. So once your brain sees the cheat word, and then if you have any kind of balls, using another acceptable way of of grotesquely misunderstanding, in the sense that something like integrity shouldn't be about gladiator, it shouldn't be about manness. It should be about humanness, about being honorable to your brain function, respecting intelligence. It shouldn't be some macho thing. But here we have to tie everything to some sports metaphor. We have to tie everything to some silly, it has to look good. It's just so stupid, that we can't take anything for what it should just do, is represent what you're trying to say without all this extra. And we're all caught up in it. I guess I can't escape it. Before making this video, I was thinking about appearance. I said, you can't do that. You can't think about, this stuff that shouldn't matter to anybody. And you shouldn't have to say it in your videos, but the fonts, the that, everything has to be put into some frame that's acceptable to some sort of knee-jerk reaction, the dumbest part of us rather than the smartest parts of us. And everything is just dumbed down because, that's the society we live in. And so if you want to communicate with the most people, you have to make it as dumb as possible. Because there aren't enough people doing this higher mind thing of understanding anything that I said in this video. Anything about understanding the distinctions between what's influencing your brain. And that the only part that's a good influence, in a sense, is the intelligence, the knowledge of how the damn thing works, and how to get more out of it, in terms of emphasizing the fact that you have this capacity to understand these concepts, and that they're the important thing, the principles. Waste is important. Okay, fairness is important. Deserve is important. All these things are important because they are how you get to a better future. You have to reward good and punish bad. It's the only way it's going to work. You can't subsidize the mess makers. All right. You have to try to starve them out of existence. So anyway, till the next time. Kind of a different video, but sort of within the realm of me. It's consistent with me, just slightly different version. I even made a good metaphor for that the other day when I was talking. privately videoing. But anyway, and I sort of said, you look, there's all kinds of places. Anytime you're talking, anytime you do something, it could have been the good song on the record. You're just putting the needle down on your record, and what you're going to do kind of just depends. If I wait 10 minutes, I do a different video, right? I took a break in this video. It would have been a different video if I didn't. And it's just a version. And some of the songs suck and some of the songs are really great. And so sometimes you put the needle down in the right place and sometimes you put the needle down in a shitty place. And it's hard to tell what you're going to get until you get it. So I can't say this is exactly what I was expecting to produce. It's not exactly what I envisioned, but it wasn't too bad. I mean, it was, maybe too many concepts thrown in and not enough evolution demonstrated, but so it's within the realm of my video. It's just a different version. It's Madonna doing the cowboy thing or something. Yeah, it's Madonna, but it's a weird version of one. Anyway, so till the next time, and such, so forth and whatnot. I mean, really, we're all in this together kind of thing. I mean, you have to be trying. We all have to be trying not to be making messes, not to be fucking it up. So, yeah.